Masters have said that methods of occultism, though in main unchangeable, have yet to conform to altered times and circumstances. We know that ancient wisdom is an ageless wisdom, and it doesn't change because it is not in the framework of time and space that it has been given to the humanity, child humanity, by the instructors during the early periods of humanity. What is necessary for us is to grasp the principles out of the details of circumstances, event, personalities, which become the subject matter of our discussion. Masters have mentioned in one of their letters that you are yet barbarians with all your boasted civilization, which rests so exclusively upon intellect. So their observation is that we are heavily dependent on our intellect. At other place, they have mentioned that we are at midway point of fourth round. World teems with results of intellectual activity and spiritual decline. This is a very serious observation by the masters. In this fifth round, on one hand, we find intellectual activity is growing, but at the same time, correspondingly, there is a decline in the spiritual consciousness, awareness. In this fifth race, the thrust is on development of the analytical mind, which in theosophy we also call as lower mind. And as we know, the peculiarity of this mind is it learns through analysis. And in analysis, there is insistence on differences, separateness, I-ness. And therefore, it lacks the holistic vision or holistic approach. It doesn't reflect synthetic, inclusive outlook. It's not conscious of underlying unity and oneness of purpose. So these are our limitations. It has also been said that human mind has remained the same throughout millennia of years. On this background, when we study master's letters or letters from the masters of wisdom, though we take for reference the circumstances and personalities of the last century or century and a half, to be precise, we must bear in mind that those old generations were also suffering from the same shortcomings so far as our mental capacities are concerned or our intellectual capacities are concerned. We can study the human nature equally with advantage and compare it with ours in present times. Times have changed. Circumstances have changed because of the knowledge which the intellect has developed, because of the development of technologies out of knowledge. And these things have changed our lifestyles. But this knowledge has not been turned into wisdom as we differentiate in theosophy. Wisdom gives us a broad-based universal approach, a holistic approach. But our concrete mind keeps us down to the immediate goals or advantages which we derive from it. Mind, as we have seen, is dual, is self-centered, and therefore looks at everything from that selfish interest, and it lacks the broader view, deeper insight. Looking ahead, much beyond our short-sighted vision. Therefore, while studying these letters, we can see how masters are guiding the individuals who came in their contact. How they have tried to change the limitations from which those persons were suffering. How they inspired them. How their hidden potentials were tapped and converted into active capacities. And this is not for any personal gain or advantage, but for the advancement of humanity, for reducing their suffering, and for giving them the knowledge of universal laws on which our living depends. At present, they have described humanity as an orphan, fatherless, motherless humanity. It is similar to the body and its members fighting with each other. Each organ taking care of itself, and body uncared for eternally. So to come out of this condition, these letters serve as a guide. They indicate the want of firm universal principles applicable to all people at all times. And this study will help us to discover those principles, making them suitable, applicable to our present times. That will serve perhaps the purpose, as I mentioned in the last discussions, that the sixth subroot, subrace, is already in the pipeline. We have spent about 150 years now, and another 550 years will see humanity reaching hopefully that stage of the sixth subroot race, having developed their intuitional capacities of the higher or abstract mind, which we are lacking today if we look at the majority of humanity. So this purpose will definitely be served by study of these letters. That is what I feel. Even in case of secret doctrine, HPB has mentioned that secret doctrine may not bring you to the truth, but it will definitely show you the direction in which to move closer to the truth. You need not study secret doctrine from page to page. You can open any page, read any passage, ponder over it. And that pondering, that exercise given to your mind, will develop in you the intuitional capacity. Even secret doctrine, though written by HPB, is the child of the masters, mind child. So we can look at the study of masters' letters from the same point of view. And I think we will benefit by that study. With these remarks, let us now come back to letter number 19. We have already seen that this letter was received by Henry Steele Olcott, where the masters have mentioned that your impressibility is so changeful that I must not wholly depend upon it at this critical time. We will see throughout these letters that masters are not just relying on our ways of handling situations, because they have access to the powers belonging to the spiritual plane. Even though our intuition is not developed, they can see the movement which takes place within us. And here, masters have noticed that kind of movement in the mind of HSO. And they have observed that his impressibility is changeful. That means he is not able to retain the same mental impressions. And there are factors like predilections, affections, suspicions, antipathies, etc., which modify those impressions from time to time. So one has to rise above these limitations, these conditionings. So even though HSO was very much devoted, capable, efficient, loyal, all exceptional qualities, and masters have spared no words to praise him. And yet, as we know, neither HSO nor HPB were perfect. They had their limitations. And in spite of that, masters had selected them as the best available agents for them to act on the physical plane. So, for this, they have advised that one has to observe the first impressions carefully. Mistakes spring from failure to watch first impressions. That is the important observation made in this letter. If we can look at things with calm, quiet, open mind, before our tendencies, predilections, our likes, dislikes, our fears, suspicion, and all that take hold of our mind, if we can get a correct picture of the first impression, that will be more of an intuitive nature. And that will bring us near to the truth. And if we are guided by those first impressions, there is a greater possibility that our actions will be right. We may avoid committing mistakes because of lack of right perception. So this is what we can learn from this observation of the masters. This had further relevance with what was going on in the mind of Colonel Olcott. He was engrossed with thoughts about HBB's handling the affairs. And Earlier, he had an impression that she is infallible. But now, his mind is in a revolt against HPB's infallibility, in an extreme revolt. And therefore, masters have to put him on the guard against the misconceptions which he was carrying about HPB. They had to tell him that whatever is happening in his mind is unjust to her, and he will have to suffer for it karmically. Master could observe Colonel's dark, sinful thoughts about her while he was on the day. And he thought it necessary to caution him, to make him aware of his shortcomings, and to prevent him from taking any hasty, wrong steps when he lands in London. Therefore, he advised him to remove all those misconceptions by kind persuasion, by appeal to cause of truth, and by sense of loyalty. HPB's one great quality was she was to the last moment loyal to the master. She did everything she's considered to be helpful to masters in their work. She did it always with great pleasure, happiness, smile on her face, in spite of the sufferings which she was passing through while working for them. That's why this advice to HSO to understand her, and not only to understand her, but to spread that understanding amongst others who were considering HPB as the originator of all disturbances which were taking place at that time, and which were weighing very heavily in the mind of Colonel Olcott. So this later is to convince others also by persuasion, by appeal to cause of truth, not being carried away by the personality of HPB, but to look at her real person, real HPB, as known to the masters. Masters knew her from several incarnations in the past. And it was that permanent nature which they were referring to while cautioning Colonel Olcott. They have made it clear that they have no personal favorites except for good acts. So it is not like or dislike for a person, but for the acts performed with good intentions, good motive, not for the self, but for the humanity. Therefore, in reality, their favor was for anything that was done in the interest of the humanity. So this we have to notice while studying this later to Colonel Olcott. Masters were interested not only just educating HSOs, Colonel Olcott, but they wanted through him to clear the impending danger to the movement as a whole, theosophical movement as a whole, by sending a right message to all the theosophists of that time. So that was considered as a significant declaration from the masters about HPB's fidelity and her suffering for them. They had given a clear-cut assurance that they will never desert, supplant HPB. So great was her role in the theosophical movement. In that context, they have mentioned that ingratitude is never their vice. But they have limitations in communicating with Colonel Olcott. With him, they could not communicate as they could with HPB on a different higher level, spiritual level. With HSO, it was a direct communication continued through course of circumstances, as they have mentioned. He had not at that time developed the intuitive capacities. Master said to come down to his plane rather than his approaching them on their plane of consciousness. They have mentioned that this is due to HSO's limitations and fault. He was in perplexity. That is what they have mentioned in the later. About the division of work between HPB and HSO also they had to clarify in this later. Because Colonel Olcott, being president, had a feeling that the HPB was sometimes crossing her limit and interfering with his work. That's why here masters made it clear that HPB is not concerned with administration, which was the exclusive area of Colonel Olcott. And therefore, their masters expected that she should control her strong nature. That need they appreciated with Colonel Olcott. But they have made it explicitly clear that though she has nothing to do with administration, she had everything to do with occult. In occult matters, she was their direct agent. No other disciple was needed to interact or communicate with her. And she was the best available person at that time. So Master had made it clear that sometimes there may be matters which were of exoteric nature, purely administrative nature, but having deeper consequences touching the esoteric or occult, and there Colonel must tolerate if he feels there is any aggressiveness or interference from her side. So Master took a lot of care to maintain proper relationship between these two personalities. Therefore, he was warned not to bias his intuitive loyalty to her, permitting suspicion, resentment against her. Against her, many follies that he perceived. Even about secret doctrine, Colonel Olcott had many misconceptions, misunderstandings. The way it was written by Madame Blavatsky. So Masters had to make it clear that though it is written by her, all the opinions or comments expressed therein were those of the Masters. They were corrected by Master K.H. from time to time, or she was inspired to incorporate those into the secret doctrine at behest of the Masters. That's why they made it clear that Colonel should not have any suspicion about that document. They considered it as epitome of occult truths, a guide for several centuries to come for the humanity as a whole, a source of information and instruction for a long time. It has also been mentioned by the Master in the same letter that is being given as a warning to him and also for others, because he was expected to make others aware of the contents of the letters as to the role of HPB and her real picture, the truth about her. But it was more in the nature of a guide for Colonel Olcott in the discharge of his duties to function effectively as a president, but at the same time in complete harmony with HPV. Therefore, they advised him that he should read and use the letter very discreetly. I think that is in brief the sum and substance of this letter number 19. Hello,
Yes, sir.
Vibhaji, how much time is there?
Sir, it is 8:40. You can continue for 10 more minutes. And then
10
at 8:50, we can have the translation.
8:50, okay. Yeah. So the next letter is again begins with the sentence, I have watched your many thoughts. I have watched their silent evolution and the yearnings of your inner soul. And since your pledge permits me to do so, having a few things to tell you concerning yourself and those you love, I take the opportunity, one of the last there are, to write to you directly, to say a few words. You know, of course, that once that HPV's aura in the house is exhausted, you can have no more letters from me. So this is at a time when communication was through HPV. But all the time, masters are referring to the silent evolution of the yearnings of inner soul. So these letters are greatly helpful to the correspondents to understand themselves better, to have greater clarity about their own shortcomings and defects. And Master is making clear that he takes this opportunity of looking into the mind of others, because the pledge permits him to do so. Which means, otherwise, Master would never have looked into the mind of others, because it interferes with the privacy of a person. Even we have seen this in case of Krishnamurti, when he was asked by somebody, how is it that many people have deceived you? Is it that you did not know their real character? And Krishnamurti had replied that I never look into the mind of a person because it is against the decency of relationship, where you have to maintain the decorum and not encroach upon the privacy of a person. So even at the cost of being deceived or suffering financially, etc. Krishnamurti never transgressed those limits he had put upon himself. So here also it is clear from the master's statement that it is only because the pledge permits him to do so, he is observing these things, and that too for the benefit of the person who is being observed. I want you to be acquainted with the situation as it now stands. I want you to be acquainted with the situation as it now stands. Your loyalty to the cause entitles you to this. So here again, one thing is clear, that this privilege is not a personal favor, but it is as a result of the loyalty to the cause which the person has shown throughout. So it is again something like cause and effect of the karma. It is not a personal favor. It is the result of the loyalty to the cause. By placing so constantly her personality over and above her inner and better self, though she knows it not, she has done all she could for the last week to sever herself from us forever. Here we can see the working and the struggle between our personality and individuality. Personality over and above inner and better self. That is what is mentioned in the later. And this happens many times unaware of, being unconscious of the struggle going on. Because what happens? Many times, if we are not sensitive enough to our inner and better self, our outer personality takes hold, and the real nature of the individuality doesn't express itself through our actions. And that results in severing herself from us forever. So, where we fail to control our senses, control our outer personality, and give an opportunity to our inner nature, it is difficult to maintain relations with the masters. That resulted into severing from us forever. Because it is only on the higher planes of consciousness that we can have real, durable, constant relationship with the masters, not otherwise. Yet so pure and genuine she is, that I am ready to leave a chink in the door she slams unconsciously to herself into her own face, and await for the entire awakening of that honest nature whenever that time comes. So, master is prepared to wait. Here we can notice their nature, their approach, their patience. They are not in a hurry to get things done from the persons by either coarse or pressurized moves. They allow the person to really develop that purity, that maturity, that intuitive willingness to act according to the guidance, direction, inspiration received from the masters. He is prepared to wait for the entire awakening of that honest nature whenever that time comes. So time is an important element in this. Nothing is to be done before that opportune time. Otherwise, it will amount to an immature, untimely act, and it may not bear the desired results or fruits. She is without artifice or malice, entirely truthful and sincere, yet at times quite false to herself. See, this is again expressing the duality of the nature. There is sincerity, there is honesty, there is truthfulness. All that is there. But that is a part of the individuality. But her personality, when it dominates over these things, she is at times false to herself, her own self. So many times we act against our own conscience because we fail to listen to that inner voice of the conscience. As she says, her ways are not our ways, nor can she comprehend them. When we are under the influence of our personality, which is inconsistent with our individuality, we are unable to really see the wisdom of the masters. And there we fail to understand or appreciate their ways. And we go by our own methods, styles, habits, without changing us in accordance with the inspiration received from them. Her personality coming in so strong in her ideas of the fitness of things, she cannot certainly understand our acts on our plane of life. So this is the real problem. And this problem we see masters have faced in communicating their ideas to others, especially to persons like Evo Hume and A.P. Sinnett, especially Evo Hume. We repeatedly see this, that Hume's personality was so strong and he was having that sense of superiority of culture, civilization, Western thinking, Western ideas, that he could not really understand, leave aside, appreciate the ideas received from the masters. So
Sir, we
similar
will
is
stop
the
now
thing-
after 2 minutes.
Okay, similar is the case we find here. And that's why there is lack of understanding of the acts of the masters who were acting on their own plane of consciousness. That's why Master says, tell her in all kindness that if HPB, as an example, was wrong last night, as she always is, from the Western point of view, in her everlasting natural impulses, apparently so rude and indelicate, she did it after all at her master's direct order. So here again, master is clarifying that from Western point of view, what was thought of HPB was wrong. It was not in conformity with the facts. In her everlasting natural impulses, though rude and indelicate, whatever she did it not out of her personal vagaries, but she did it after all at her master's direct order. So she had only that consideration what masters wanted to be done through her as their agent. And she did it fully, faithfully, without any reservation on her part. So here I will stop for the Hindi translation of the speech. Thank you, sister.
Thank you, Brother Tendulkar ji, for this very insightful talk that you have given us. And I now invite Sister Meenakshi ji to give us the translation in Hindi.
नमस्ते, थैंक यू सिस्टर, थैंक यू ब्रदर तेंदुलकर जी।
Thank you.
आज हम लेटर नंबर 19 का अगला पार्ट ले रहे हैं। लेटर नंबर 19, यह पत्र मास्टर के एज कर्नल ऑलकॉट को लिखते हैं 22 अगस्त 1888 में। यह पत्र कर्नल ऑलकॉट को समुद्र में शैनॉन जहाज पर मिलता है जब वे लंदन जाते हैं। मास्टर कहते हैं और उन्हें एचपीबी के प्रति गलत फहमी रहती है, इसलिए मास्टर कहते हैं अपनी भावनाओं पर जरूरी संयम रखें। आपकी व्यक्तिगत पसंद, स्नेह, संदेह या विरोध भाव से आपके कार्यों को प्रभावित न करें। एचपीबी की विलक्षणता, जैसे कि आपने एक बार सोचा था, उसके खिलाफ आपका विरोध बहुत बढ़ गया है और आप उनके साथ अन्याय कर रहे हैं, ऐसा मास्टर उन्हें कहते हैं। आगे वे कहते हैं कि मुझे खेद के साथ यह कहना पड़ता है कि इस कारण आगे चलकर औरों के साथ आपको भी भुगतना पड़ेगा। अभी जहाज के डेक पर उनके बारे में आपके विचार निंदनीय और निरादरपूर्ण थे और इसलिए मैंने आपको सतर्क करने के लिए यह उपयुक्त क्षण पाया है। हमारे प्रति न सही पर सत्य के ध्येय के खातिर वफादारी के दयापूर्ण अनुनयन द्वारा आप इस तरह की गलतफहमियों को दूर करने का प्रयास करें। हम सर्वोत्तम उपलब्ध एजेंट्स को नियुक्त करते हैं। पिछले 30 साल से मुख्य एजेंट वह व्यक्तिमत्व है जिसे दुनिया में एचपीबी के नाम से जाना जाता है, लेकिन हमारे लिए अन्य रूप से जानते हैं। निस्संदेह वह कुछ लोगों के लिए त्रुटिपूर्ण, दोषयुक्त और बहुत कष्टप्रद साबित हुई है। फिर भी आने वाले वर्षों में हमारे द्वारा इससे बेहतर किसी को खोजने की कोई संभावना नहीं है और आपके थियोसॉफिस्ट सदस्यों को इसे समझाया जाना चाहिए। थियोसॉफिस्ट को यह ज्ञात रहना चाहिए, हमारे कार्य के प्रति उसकी निष्ठा अविरत बनी है और उसके कष्ट पीड़ा इसके माध्यम से आने के कारण न तो मैं और न ही मेरे बंधुगण महात्मागण उसका परित्याग करेंगे या उसके स्थान पर किसी और को लाएंगे। कृतज्ञता हमारे दोषों में दुर्गुणों में नहीं है, ऐसा मास्टर कहते हैं। एचपीबी का प्रशासनिक कार्यवाही से कोई वास्ता नहीं है, लगाव नहीं है, लेकिन इसे आपको सभी को बताना चाहिए कि गुह्य विषयों में वह सब कुछ कर सकती है। उसके प्रति आपकी सहज निष्ठा रखने के लिए मैं आपको उसकी कई मूर्खताओं विक्षिप्तताओं के खिलाफ अपने संदेह और रोष जताने के खिलाफ चेतावनी देता हूँ। मैंने सीक्रेट डॉक्ट्रिन के बारे में आपके विचार भी नोट किए हैं। आश्वस्त रहे कि एचपीबी ने वैज्ञानिक और अन्य कार्यों से जो भी भाष्य टिप्पणी नहीं दिए उसे हमने दिया है या उसका सुझाव किया है। अन्य थियोसॉफिस्ट के कार्यों को कि हर गलती या गलत धारणा को उसके द्वारा सुधारी गई या समझाई गई हो उसे मेरे निर्देश के तहत ठीक किया गया था या सुधारा गया था। यह उसके पूर्ववर्ती की तुलना में अधिक मूल्यवान कार्य है, ग्रंथ है, गुह्य सत्यों का सार संग्रह है जो लंबे समय तक जिज्ञासु साधकों के लिए ज्ञान और निर्देश का स्रोत बना रहेगा। आखिर में इस पत्र में मास्टर कर्नल ऑलकॉट को कहते हैं, यह आपको केवल एक चेतावनी और मार्गदर्शक के रूप में दिया गया है, दूसरों के लिए केवल चेतावनी के रूप में। यदि आवश्यक हो तो आप इसका विचारपूर्वक विवेकपूर्ण उपयोग कर सकते हैं। आगे का पत्र नंबर 20 है, जो कि मास्टर के एच फ्रांसिस का अरुंडेल को लिखते हैं सितंबर 1884 में। मास्टर उनसे कहते हैं, आपके अनेक विचारों पर मैंने ध्यान दिया, मैंने उनकी वृद्धि को देखा और आपके अंतरात्मा की तड़प को देखा है और आपके तथा आपके प्रियजनों के बारे में कुछ बातें बताने के लिए आपकी प्रतिज्ञा मुझे ऐसा करने दे रही है। आप निश्चित ही यह जानती है कि एक बार घर से एचपीबी का औरा निशेष हो जाने पर आपको मुझसे कोई और पत्र नहीं मिल सकते। मैं चाहता हूँ कि आप वर्तमान स्थिति से परिचित हो। कार्य के प्रति आपकी निष्ठा आपको यह अधिकार देती है। आगे मास्टर मिसेस लॉरा हॉलोवे के बारे में कहते हैं कि वह सतत अपने व्यक्तिमत्व को, निम्न स्व को अपने श्रेष्ठतम उच्च स्व पर रखकर यानी निम्न स्व के अधीन होकर उसने पिछले सप्ताहों में वह सब कुछ किया है जिससे कि वह हमेशा के लिए हमसे दूर हो जाए। फिर भी वह इतनी शुद्ध और सच्ची है कि मैं उस दरवाजे पर एक दरार रखने के लिए तैयार हूँ जो वह अनजाने में अपने ही मुख पर पटकने वाली है, और मैं उस समय का इंतजार करूंगा जब उसके सच्चे स्वभाव की पूर्णतः जागृति होगी, अनावरण होगा। वह बिना कपट या द्वेष के पूरी तरह से सच्ची और ईमानदार है, फिर भी कभी कभी अपने आप से खोटी होती है। जैसे कि वह कहती है कि उसके तरीके हमारे तरीके नहीं है, न ही वह उन्हें समझ सकती है। उनके विचारों में उनका व्यक्तिमत्व इतना दृढ़ है कि निश्चित ही वह हमारे जीवन तल पर हमारे कार्यों को समझ नहीं सकती। पूरी विनम्रता से उसे यह बताए कि पाश्चात्य दृष्टिकोण से यदि एचपीबी अपने नित्य के स्वाभाविक आवेगों में असभ्य और बेअदब थी, तो उसने यह सब अपने गुरुदेव के प्रत्यक्ष आदेश पर किया है। थैंक यू, नमस्ते।
Thank you, Meenakshi ji. And now our session is open for any questions or any discussions which anyone would like to speak. Tendulkar ji, do you have anything to add?
I have not completed the letter. So if there are no questions or no points from others, I can, if there is time, I can continue.
No, we have already completed our time. If there is any question or discussion on the part which you have covered, we can take it from the participants.
Okay.
If not, then we can conclude the session for today and we will continue the study part 3 in our next session.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you all for participating. Let us close the session with the closing prayer. Om Asato ma Sadgamaya Tamso ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Sarvesham Swastirabhavatu Sarvesham Shantirabhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Lokaha Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukhabhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you all for joining. Thank you.